It's time for the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in. Another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, talking District 1 and 2 athletics and activities week in, week out in this great state called Idaho. My name is Brandon Baney. We are joined today by Cousin Eddie. What's going on, Cousin Eddie?
Not much. Just living the dream, Clark.
Yeah. She's a beaut, Clark.
She's a beaut.
Yeah, Cousin Eddie, a.k.a. Ryan Scaggs, at Idaho Game Night on Twitter. And speaking of, we are podcasting live on the IdahoSports.com Twitter account, as well as our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. We're going live, something we're trying out here. So if you are hanging out with us live, and you want to ask us a question, throw in a comment, talk about Ryan's ridiculous looking hat, you can do so. Throw it in the comments. We'll throw it up on the screen. Also, while you're hanging out watching, if you could hit that like button and then share this when we're all finished up, that'll help everybody who didn't tune in live find it a little bit easier. And of course, you can always listen to this podcast at IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts.
This thing is stinking warm, by the way.
Well, you know, I think the bit is over. You could take the hat off if you wanted to.
Yeah, that was a little much.
Yeah, Carrot Top, you are not the prop comic. Okay. So let's dive right into it, Ryan. A big passion of yours, of course, is wrestling. And of course, last night we did have our Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast. It's our standalone wrestling only podcast. We do live every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Time. You can go back and watch the replay of that or listen to it by subscribing to the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast on your favorite podcast catcher. But we had a lot of good North Idaho talk last night on the Mat Chat Prepcast. Before we dive into that really quickly, shots fired from our East Idaho Prepcaster, Sean Kane. Your hair looks like a 6 out of 10, Ryan.
Man, I'll take that to my barber, man. He's going to be insulted by that one.
Yeah, you never want to make the barber
not hair, Sean. No, I'm just kidding. Not bad for almost 40.
That's almost a dig at me. I mean, that's
no, you're an innocent bystander. I won't target you.
Yeah. Sean says time of giving. Yes, tis the season, no doubt. Okay, let's talk North Idaho wrestling. Tri-State happened last week at North Idaho College. This is one of the coolest events of the year. It's at the old Christensen gym. They pack the place. It's top-notch competition. Post Falls ends up taking third overall in the competition. They finish 8 points behind Bishop Kelly, which came up with 9 wrestlers, Scaggs, and they got the most out of their wrestlers. Post Falls, Ryder Seguin leaves with an injury. Had he been able to finish his match, Post Falls maybe could take second. Yeah, that was the big storyline there, but a good showing from the Trojans.
No, I mean, and I think a good showing in general from North Idaho. I mean, Tri-State's a great litmus test, and I think it says more to the individual with the tournament just because the level of competition is so insane at that tournament. It says more about the individual than the necessary team at that event particularly, just because I know that team scores matter once you get to state, but you look at the who's who of wrestling that was there. I mean, you've got teams like Ording from Washington, Lake Stevens from Washington, Meade from over in Spokane. You got Team Bishop Kelly coming up for that one. And just the level of quality that shows up at that event is absolutely – you don't see it all the time in high school wrestling week in and week out. And to see some of the results, I mean, you got guys like Cole McLamtag from Priest River with a top 4 finish. You've got Lakeland kids with a couple top 4 finishes. Lewiston's got some guys that were, in the semis and battling through and ended up taking third place. So there's some individual efforts that, winning a tri-state title, competition-wise, that's like winning state. I mean, you're wrestling the state champs from, Idaho, Washington, Montana, Oregon, and to get a tri-state title, I mean, that's like a feather in the cap on your season. I think you roll through the rest of the year pretty confident coming out of that one. Seth Martin from Post Falls looked awesome in the tournament, and he came away obviously with a championship. I'm looking at that Post Falls team, and they're loaded for bear. I mean, yeah, Ryder Seguin was out, but I think for the rest of the year, that team's going to be loaded. They're dangerous at 5A. They're going to make some noise, and I think we're going to see, as you approach River City duels, with you get the team aspect thrown in, you'll get to see more head-to-head stuff as we head towards Raleigh Lane. There's some big tournaments coming up here in Idaho that are going to be North Idaho Rumble as well, being one of them with a huge lineup this year. So it'll be really interesting to see how things shake up. Raleigh Lane's kind of the next big event, though, on the schedule for a lot of these teams statewide, where we're going to see, finally some Post Falls kids go head-to-head, toe-to-toe with like Meridian, some of the East Idaho schools that have been on the up and up as well. So it'll be, yeah, I mean, I know we talked a lot about it at length in the Matt chat last night, but just to throw my 2 cents in there and my horrible hat in the ring, figuratively and literally.
Right.
Yeah, it just, I mean, I was impressed by the kids in North Idaho this weekend. I mean, that was a great showing.
Yep. Two other big stories from North Idaho wrestling. The second annual Andrew Beck Memorial Duels were held. Of course, Andrew Beck, the great pioneer for women's wrestling in the state of Idaho, gone way too soon. It's always an emotional tournament. Clearwater Valley got all the way to the finals and lost to Tri-Valley by only 3 points. I was very impressed with the Rams wrestling program. Well,
we know the Rams have been good the last few years, and the Myers guys that have been coming through, and there's a whole slew of them. And I mean, that team is, for a small school in Idaho, you got a pretty hefty lineup, and you've seen them. And Potlatch historically has had good kids come through as well. And you throw in the Prairies and Grangevilles, and Highland's been a youth program that's been getting on the lift. And, you look at some of the other guys. I mean, I kind of missed with Tri-State, but like, you got guys like Trey Gibson from St. Mary's, had himself a whale of a tournament too. So if you're looking at like 2A wrestling for going towards state, I mean, there's some who's who out there in some of these smaller schools. There's dudes that'll step toe to toe with anyone. It's Clearwater Valley is one of those teams. They've got, 4 or 5 guys that'll step toe to toe with the bigger schools.
For sure. So Clearwater Valley takes second. Grangeville was 5th. Lapboy was 6th. Orofino took 8th. Scaggs, they had 1 wrestler. Yeah, that's impressive. Carrying the torch for Orofino. That's great.
You're able to get a podium finish. You get yourself some team points there, and it matters for your school. And that's crazy to see that Orofino with 1 wrestler. That's a school that's just been historically such a strong wrestling school. To go through the growing pains that they're going through, kind of stinks for the Maniacs, because that's historically been a really, really strong program.
Yeah, and Lapway took 6th. That wrestling program is getting built up. We're obviously going to talk about Lapway a lot in basketball here coming up, but it's cool to see too.
It's cool to see. I mean, the rising tides lift all boats, I think, as far as athletics go. And, wrestling is one of those sports that, you look at it on the girls' side too, and the growth on the girls' side is going to help on the boys and vice versa. And you're seeing that with like some of the quality that's coming out of North Idaho on the girls' side of wrestling as well. I mean, they've had down the road in Moscow, and you've got girls up here in North Idaho at Coeur d'Alene and at Bonners Ferry. There's, the growth, that's for the Matt chat. We're kind of turning it into here, but, it's something that you see that's helping the small schools grow. And I mean, I'm all for it. Like, that's an opportunity. Any chance that you get for a kid to get themselves better, male or female, it doesn't matter. Like, give them that opportunity and let them run with it. And I think that we're seeing that at the smaller schools. Lapway's, stepping up with a program. That's great to see. I mean, that's just great for the sport.
Yeah, you talked about the Bonners Ferry girls. Lakeland hosted a girls tournament over the weekend. Bonners Ferry went and cleaned up. They won by, I think it was 80 or 90 points, which is awesome to see. One more Bonners Ferry note before we move on. In girls basketball, Scaggs, Aisha Abubakari recently crossed the 1,000 point threshold for her career. So way to go, Aisha.
And I think in the same week, Asher Williams hit 1,000 points in the career as well. So a cool little 1-2 punch there for the Badgers.
Yeah, they've got it going on up there in Bonners Ferry. It's the Christian Wiener effect. I think
that's a big deal for the Badgers, and to see them, have some success after, the I don't want to say doldrums, but last year getting that state runner-up finish and coming back with a lineup that can make another threatening run this year is big for that team. And the girls team, just the quality of athletes they've had coming through the school. I mean, it says a testament to the coaching that they've got in that community.
Yeah, of course, Christian Wiener is a great writer for us at IdahoSports.com. He lives in Bonners Ferry, helps coach the boys basketball team. He and his wife coached the cross country team together this past year. So, yeah, I think we found our title, the Christian Wiener Effect. He's going to love seeing his name in the title. That'll be great. Yeah, for sure. But good things happening at Bonners Ferry. Good things happening in basketball across the landscape, Ryan. Let's go girls basketball first and then boys basketball second. We'll kind of recap all of the holiday hoops action that took place and then get you caught up on what's coming up ahead. I think we have to start in girls basketball with Coeur d'Alene going down to the Tarkanian Classic in Las Vegas on the girls' side, and they find themselves smack dab in the semifinals today against Rigby, an old familiar face from Idaho. This is the matchup we wanted, right? It's in the semifinals. Winner will move on to the championship. Kind of cool that they're playing it in Las Vegas too.
It's cool they're playing in Vegas at the same time. It's like, man, you could have saved yourself some money and just played that one, at a neutral site somewhere in the state of Idaho and probably not had to pay for the flights. But no, a great tournament and a great showing for both programs. I mean, to give, the East region some love as well. I mean, like that's a region in the state athletically that is on an upswing. I know that Rigby's been looking better. You got teams like Madison that could be, difficult to handle this year as well. And so there's some other teams in East Idaho that could give fits come state tournament time. But Coeur d'Alene, to make it to the semis, I like that lineup. They're starting to gel a little bit more, I guess you could say. They were, you looking at the individual pieces at the start of the season, you're like, man, this could be a great team. But, they hadn't really figured out how to play the team ball necessarily yet. And now they're starting to figure it out. And you're seeing the distribution numbers, tick up, and they don't necessarily need 28 from Tegan Coleman night after night. She can distribute and she passes more than sufficiently. And she's a great distributor, but I think that part of the game is really growing for her. But she can take over a game too. And that's the other part about, that team, that they're going to get better as the season goes on. But yeah, Coeur d'Alene playing Rigby in the semis today. That's a big deal. And for a very competitive tournament, kind of interesting to see so many Idaho teams end up in that one bracket. But you do what you can do and just go win that tournament and win the dang thing.
So Coeur d'Alene in their opener defeated Democracy Prep Nevada. Dude, these Nevada schools, these just sound like made up schools. We were talking on the East Idaho Prepcast. Rigby, seriously, Rigby beat something called Basic Academy, and now you have Democracy Prep. Okay.
South Harmon Institute of Technology coming up next.
I mean, I don't know. These sound like made up places, but Coeur d'Alene did beat Democracy Prep Nevada 57-40. They won against Bingham, Utah yesterday, 63-51. The winner of this game will play a team from Utah in the championship tomorrow at the Tarkanian Classic, either West High from Salt Lake City or Ridgeline, which is also a very good team from Utah. So good luck to the Lady Vikes as they take on Rigby today, 4:05 p.m. Pacific time at the Tarkanian Classic down in Las Vegas. Other holiday hoops action from the past week. Scaggs, we've got to talk about. We're going to go from 5A all the way to 1A D2 now with Kendrick, where the Tigers went up to the Sitka Holiday Shootout in Alaska. What a cool once-in-a-lifetime trip. Yeah. Now, in terms of the competition, I don't know. They beat Chugiak. These are all Alaska schools. They beat Chugiak 56-20. Sitka, the host school, 59-21. Petersburg in their final game, 45-2.
Yeah. I know the depth of my knowledge of high school sports stops with Alaska. So what I may know about the state of Washington, I know absolutely nothing about Alaska basketball. Kendrick could have played out of their minds and beat some really good teams, or they could have played some really bad ones. But I still have yet to hear back about them bringing back some fresh seafood for me. So that was the main thing that I was worried about their trip up to Alaska. But in all seriousness, though, like that Kendrick team is, we'll talk about it as we go on we'll do our power rankings. But, that's a team to keep an eye on. I mean, can we see a double dip maybe in the 1A D2 classification this year where you could see boys and girls teams, maybe get a double dip on a state title? That's a team to keep an eye on. That Kendrick team is loaded. They were good last year. They're good this year. They can make a run for sure.
Yeah, Kendrick now is 12-1. Their lone loss came to Kamiai in overtime. They beat Cami in overtime, and then they lost the rematch 57-39. They just beat Prairie last night, Skaggs, a really good Prairie team, 56-35.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's like I said, Kendrick's a team to keep an eye on in 1A D2. They're playing, kind of that hybrid schedule. They're going to get a matchup against Grangeville, I think, coming up after New Year. That's going to be a big one to keep an eye on. That'll tell you exactly how good they're going to be if they're taking on the Bulldogs. That Grangeville team is super good too. It's going to be there's going to be some great matchups coming up the next couple weeks here in North Idaho.
Major League. Ron Ireland's got the Tigers rocking and rolling again. Haley Taylor, Harley Heimgartner. They've got Ruby Stewart back. She was a freshman on that varsity team that got all the way to the championship 3 years ago. And so, they've got the pieces in place to make another deep run potentially. And of course, we're always looking to the matchups with Deary, right? They beat Deary right before they left for Alaska by a single point. 36-35. The rematch with Deary will come all the way at the end of January 25th. Can't wait for that rematch.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a great game, and that Deary team's one to keep an eye on too. They've had a tough early season schedule, but that league, I think that prepares you pretty well for the state tournament. How seeding shakes out, that's always the concern now with how things kind of get turned out with rankings and all that fun stuff, but. I don't want to, put the horse before the cart, but you kind of look at those two teams getting the bids to state right now, just based upon competition going. So, but there's a whole lot of basketball between now and then.
Yep, for sure. Okay, let's talk about let's break down your North Idaho 9, and then we'll kind of preview what's coming up on the holiday slate for the girls side of things in basketball. Skaggs, we'll throw your North Idaho 9 up on the screen. We'll have it go across the bottom line here like the ESPN ticker. But for those of you that are listening to the podcast audio version of this, go ahead and break down your North Idaho 9 in girls hoops, Ryan.
Yeah, so number one, got Lake City. Obviously, they have proven, I think, so far early on, they are probably the marquee team in North Idaho, at least as far as a complete team. I don't, you talk about Coeur d'Alene still being in the mix. There's a lot to happen there between those two teams, and they still haven't faced one another. And we're going to have, the rivalry games coming up this winter. They're going to be good ones. Sandpoint is a team I look at. They haven't been at full strength for the last 2 weeks, and they've still been able. They had a tough loss, obviously, to Lake City, but they've been able to. They pulled up. I think when they beat. Who was it? They played
Coeur d'Alene.
No, Kellogg the other night.
Kellogg.
They beat Kellogg by 4. They were without most of their starters. I think they had one normal starter in the game. They brought up a host of junior varsity players as well that got great minutes. They were able to beat a pesky Kellogg team with 3 JV kids in the lineup. And they were. That's a team that you look at. Sandpoint is good. We know what they were. Obviously, defending state champs, but to know that level of talent resides within that program is a promising sign. If you're Coach Love, look out. Sandpoint's a team to be reckoned with. Coeur d'Alene, I've got at 3. Grangeville, I've got at 4. I talked about the Bulldogs. That team is deep. They're good. Coach Barger's one of the best in the business as far as it goes in North Idaho or in Idaho, period. We'll see them. They take on Sandpoint, I believe, tomorrow night. That game takes place at the Idaho Central Credit Union Arena in Moscow.
Correct. It's a real quick. Sorry. It's a doubleheader. Sandpoint and Kellogg boys at 5:00, and then Grangeville Sandpoint girls at 7:00.
Yeah. And that's going to be a great game. You look at those, that matchup, Grangeville Sandpoint's going to be a nice little treat before your Christmas break. And 5, I've got Timberlake. That's just a team that continues to win. 6, Lapway. They've been able to keep things going consistently. Kendrick at 7, Cami at 8. And I've got Troy rounding out at number 9.
Yeah, pretty impressive North Idaho 9 there, Ryan. So again, it's Lake City 1, Sandpoint 2, Coeur d'Alene 3, Grangeville 4, Timberlake 5, Lapway 6, Kendrick 7, Cami 8, Troy 9. These are the North Idaho 9, Ryan's rankings of the top 9 teams in girls basketball, regardless of classification. It's an all-encompassing ranking. So
yeah, and that's just up to, I didn't count for last night's results, so that was up until yesterday afternoon. So
No Tarkanian results included in that. Okay, let's preview what's coming up here. We actually have a holiday tournament that starts today, Ryan. Little mini 2-game tournament here for the Lakeside boys and girls. Specifically, we'll talk about the girls first. It is the Santa Slam holiday tournament hosted by Wellpinit High School in Washington. The Lakeside girls are going to go over and they're going to play Inchelium tonight or this afternoon.
Inchelium, yes, Inchelium.
And good thing this isn't a Washington. Inchelium, thank you, Ryan. They're going to play Inchelium today at 3:00, and then they'll play the hosts from Wellpinit tomorrow at 4:30. What kind of competition is this going to be for the Lakeside girls?
I mean, I look at them and what they got a couple big wins under their belt already, and at least within conference. But I look at that with Wellpinit. Typically, I don't know what they are this year, but historically they've been fairly decent as far as basketball goes. So I think if you come away going 2-0, you had yourself a weekend. If you go 1-1 and split, I don't think it's time to sell the farm yet. But you got to necessarily regroup after Christmas and come back and kind of tighten things up, because I look at them and they could be a team to be reckoned with. I mean, I know we talked about Wallace, but they've already flexed a little bit on some of the other teams in North Idaho. I think they kind of Lakeside in the girls' side holds the upper hand right now in my mind. Approaching league play, that's a team that can make some noise. So we know what they are on the boys' side, obviously, but on the girls, they've got players and they can flat shoot the ball.
Yeah, and they already had a huge matchup last Friday. They went to Wallace and beat the Miners 38-35. Very close game. Wallace had their chances at the end, but man, I can't wait for the rematch. It comes at the very last game of the regular season, January 31st. You figure those two will be fighting tooth and nail for that, supremacy from District 1. Lakeside's 4-3. Wallace is 8-3 on the season.
Yeah. No, I look at that, and that's, that all signs kind of point towards that coming up, and that's going to be the thing to watch. So, yeah.
Definitely. All right, so we'll keep an eye on Lakeside as they play Inchelium.
Inchelium.
Yep. Inchelium. Okay, Inchelium.
Inchelium. Yeah, Inchelium, not Inchelium, but yeah, Inchelium.
Inchelium. Yeah. The Inchelium enchilada. All right, that's a good way. I'll remember that now. They play Wellpinit as well. Okay, let's go all the way back to the 5A ranks. Let's check in with Lake City Scaggs. They're obviously number 1 in your North Idaho 9. They're 11-1 on the season. Only losses to Rocky Mountain by a single point, 45-44. They will play in a little mini tournament over in Snohomish, Washington, coming up on the 27th, 28th, and 29th. The Glacier Peak Invitational. They're going to start with King's Christian School from Washington first. That's a private Christian school. That's going to be a tough matchup.
Yeah, no, that's historically a really good program. And so, you start playing private schools on the west side in Washington, you're walking into kind of a bear's den. We saw Coeur d'Alene boys obviously play Bellarmine Prep the other night and get a win there, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But Lake City girls going over there on the west side to get some competition. There's some really, really good teams over in the Seattle area, especially on the east side of the Sound. You start getting into East King County and you're going to get some quality programs. And, I applaud Coach for getting the program over there and the athletic director and everybody getting that tournament on the docket. Like, that's going to be a nice little test for them necessarily. I mean, you played the who's who of the Boise area schools. So what are you going to do next? Go find your next best competition. I think you get over there and you might be finding better competition than you would find in Vegas. So that, in my mind, I don't think that's a bad consolation prize necessarily.
Yeah. This is going to be a really good measuring stick type of game for Lake City. It'll be the midst of 5 straight Washington opponents. They've already beaten North Central 62-20 and University 81-42. And now they're going to Snohomish for this 3-day Glacier Peak invite. Again, December 27th through the 29th. Okay, let's talk about the East Idaho Holiday Shootout, Ryan. You've got Lakeland and Sandpoint both making the trip down to East Idaho. Skyline, Bonneville, Rigby, Idaho Falls all hosting this tournament. All we can tell you are the opening matchups, because then it's brackets and it all depends on who wins or loses. But right out of the gates, Lakeland's going to get a challenge with Pocatello, the favorite from District 5 this year in 4A hoops.
Yeah, we want to know who Lakeland is this year. I think that's a great test round one. I mean, you want to see what they can do in the 4A ranks and if they can make some noise. And, but the problem is they're going to have to dethrone the defending state champs in their own conference. So if Lakeland's going to make a run at things and try to make some noise in the IEL, they've got to beat teams like Pocatello. They've got to get that confidence train moving and step up their level of performance. And, if they can beat Pokey, that's a big win for that program moving forward. And I know there's some quality athletes on that team. They can play basketball pretty well, but we talk about the other side of that one too, but I know that we'll talk a little bit more about that Sandpoint game because I look at that one. That's going to be a good little test. But Lakeland, they got a test with Pocatello. That's a team on the rise. I know you talked about it with Sean in your Prepcast at East Idaho before this one. That it's kind of a prove it game for Pocatello to get a win over Lakeland. But I kind of look at that one as both programs looking for a big signature win on their schedule early on in the year. So if Lakeland gets a win, I really do see them being competitive in the North. They have been already, and I think they're going to continue to do so the rest of this regular season.
Yeah, and Pocatello's got size, right? They've got 3 players that are 6 feet or taller. So can Lakeland counteract some of that size? Remains to be seen. But it's a good measuring stick because Sandpoint's got size too. So Sandpoint also playing, and they will get Madison right away, a 5A program that has, looked pretty good this year. And so I'm sure Will Love, coach at Sandpoint, says, yeah, we'll take on all comers. Yeah,
anybody, anytime, anywhere, right? And that's, I think, the mantra that they walk into this game with. But, if they're back at full strength, this is you look at the lineup now, what they've gotten production-wise, 1 through 7 out of this lineup. Coach Love's got to be just drooling right now, seeing the production that he's been getting from his bench with some of his starters out. This is a team that can make some serious noise. I know a lot of people are looking right now at Shelley and watching the buzzsaw that's going on down there in Southeast Idaho with them. But I'm sorry, but you wake up this Sandpoint team. I know that they shouldn't be shocking anybody as the defending state champs, but I kind of feel there's not necessarily enough fanfare with this team. But Madison's a great team. I think they're a team that's going to be dangerous. You look at athletics wise, you're one of the bigger schools in the state of Idaho as well at the 5A ranks. So you're obviously going to have that numbers game. But this is a great test for Coach Love's crew. And to see them kind of, play chess versus checkers of everybody else. And, I like him as the coaching edge, just going into any game. He's going to be able to scheme, I think, against the best of any of them. But that Sandpoint team, I look at, this is a great opportunity for them to get some really, really good quality opponents other than just their normal IEL schedule, which is really good too, by the way. But finally seeing them get a step out of Kootenai County or Bonner County, or even Spokane County for that matter, and playing the teams in Washington, they finally get to see the rest of the state. This would be a good little showcase for them.
Yes. So good luck to both Sandpoint and Lakeland traveling to East Idaho for the East Idaho Holiday Shootout. The 3A girls basketball teams in our area, Bonners Ferry and Timberlake, are both competing in the annual Eagle Holiday Classic. This is hosted by West Valley High School in Spokane. For Timberlake, the Tigers check in with a 7-2 record. Their only losses were by 5 to Sandpoint and by 2 to Deer Park, Washington. Yeah. Otherwise, they've got some impressive wins on the ledger. They just beat Moscow on Monday night, 49-35. They will play Colfax on Wednesday, December 27th, and then they will play Toppenish on Thursday, December 28th. That Toppenish matchup will be a pretty good one, I think.
I think the Colfax matchup could be a pretty good one, too. Colfax historically has got a pretty good athletic program there. If the speed trap that is Colfax, Washington on your way to Pullman coming from Spokane. But, look at that Deer Park team. That Deer Park game, not a lot of people know about Washington basketball. That Deer Park team's really good. And so, to have a 2-point loss to them, that's telling you that Timberlake team, they're pretty complete. I know they're missing some pieces. They can still play high-level basketball. So, don't sleep on Colfax making a game of things. I still think Timberlake will come away with a win in that one late, especially though I think their bench and their length is going to force the hand a little bit in that game. But, yeah, you go into that Toppenish game for Timberlake, being able to play that one on day 2. That's going to be a good matchup for Timberlake to kind of see how they go against similar level as far as school size competition. I would equate Top Miss school size to like the Fruitlands and everybody else in 3A. So that's going to be a good little matchup for Timberlake, and I think they got a nice little draw there in that tournament.
Yeah, and on the same time, Bonners Ferry is 5-3. They started the year 0-3 with a 5-point loss to Moscow, double-digit loss to Sandpoint, and then an 8-point loss to that same Deer Park team that Timberlake also lost to. And since then, Bonners Ferry has snapped off 5 wins in a row, and none of them have been particularly close. The closest win in that time was over Kellogg, 78-62. That's a 14-point margin of victory. So that's been their closest game, quote unquote. Bonners Ferry is going to compete at the Eagle Holiday Classic. They're going to play St. George's, which is a private school in Washington, I believe in Spokane, on Wednesday, the 27th. And then they will play Newport on Thursday, the 28th. I think Bonners goes 2-0 here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think St. George's, I mean, they're a B school in Washington, but I mean, they've been historically good. They're a private, Catholic school there in Spokane, but I look at that Bonners Ferry team. They're dangerous. So anybody matches up really well with Timberlake, it's that Bonners Ferry team, and that's gonna be a nice little back and forth there coming up after the new year with those two teams playing one another. That Newport game is a winnable game as well for Bonners Ferry. I think they just come in and if they've proven their offense can score at will. If they get buckets to fall and they get a little confidence there, that's a really dangerous team. So yeah, absolutely. I don't think 2-0 in that tournament is going to be out of the question at all for them.
Yeah, let's swing down to 2A Kellogg. They are 5-4, 1-0 in league play, which is the number that really counts. They beat Priest River in their conference opener 55-28. And they beat on Tuesday, December 12th, Scaggs, they beat my alma mater, Stevensville High School from Montana. For some reason, Stevensville said, yeah, we'll come to Kellogg and play you and we'll lose by 20 and thank you for it. 53-33. So,
thanks for the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
All we got was a ham sandwich and a bus ride home. Yeah.
When I was in high school at Stevensville, Montana, my junior year, we counted up the wins between volleyball, girls basketball, and softball. They won like 5 games total amongst all 3 sports. It was not good. But Kellogg, they're going to go over to Rockford to play in the Freeman Holiday Tournament. Freeman High is hosting this. They are going to play the Royal JV on the 27th and Royal's good, right?
Royal's really good.
And they're a big school. So this is going to be,
well, they're a small school, but they are like, you talk about loaded to the gills with talent and athletes. I mean, I think that they've won it just for football reference. It's something like 8 out of the last 10 state championships in 1A football in the state of Washington. It's a small community, but all they get is athletes. And so, to play Royal, that's a good little matchup for Kellogg, to take on a Royal team.
Yeah, they're going to play the JV from Royal on Wednesday, December 27th, and then they'll play the hosts from Freeman on Thursday, the 28th. So, and then they have the rest of the year off, and then they get back into conference play with St. Mary's on Tuesday, January 9th, but should be a good 2-game stretch for the Kellogg Wildcats for sure. Let's go 1A D1, the annual Colton Christmas tournament taking place over in Colton. Genesee and Potlatch will be going over to compete, Scaggs. Genesee will play the hosts from Colton on December 27th, and then they'll play Garfield Palouse on December 28th. Before that, though, they've got one final non-conference showdown with Deary on Thursday, the 21st. This will be a very telling game for where Genesee stands in the thick of things.
Well, yeah, and it kind of foretells for next year too, as far as what that league's going to look like with Genesee coming down. But yeah, that's going to be a nice little matchup. I think that stretch of Deary, that's a tough game for them. We're going to see what they were made of because Deary, we know what they can do, in the 1A D1 ranks. But Colton historically has got good quality programs. Garpal's been another team that's historically been in the mix as well. Potlatch is another team, obviously a league opponent to come down. So how things shake out should be pretty good, pretty telling, I should say, for that Bulldogs program to see where they're at and approaching, district tournament time as we get into this, the month of January and into February. Things are going to start really heating up, and you're going to have those, that's the one nature of the White Pine League. Sometimes you get 3 games in a week. And so, you get a Tuesday, Friday, Saturday or something like that. So there's going to be no rest for the weary. So it'll be a nice little test there for that Christmas break.
Yeah, for sure. Potlatch also going over to the Colton Christmas tournament. They're playing St. Mary's tonight in St. Mary's. They'll play then Garpal on Wednesday, the 27th, and then Asotin on Thursday, the 28th. So that's 2 gettable games there for Potlatch, I think, there at the Colton Christmas tournament. And then we saved the best for last. Shannon Wilson has been in the chat patiently waiting for us to talk about
Shannon.
Shannon has been patiently waiting for us to talk about the Avista tournament in Lewiston and Clarkston. There's a team from Downey, California. Rocky Mountain is coming up from Boise. There's Oregon, Richland, and then Lewiston, Moscow, Lapway, all going to be there as well. And Clarkston, of course. Yep. Shannon, if you're still in the chat, let me know. I've got a question for you about the Avista tournament. So let me know if you're still here watching and put up that you're still here. But let's look at this bracket on the girls' side. This tournament starts Thursday, the 28th, right out of the gates. Grangeville and Lewiston playing at 9 a.m. I love it right out of the gates.
Yeah. No, I mean, you look at this tournament, hats off to Shannon and the tournament directors to get a lineup like this at the tournament. I mean, I always say LCSC is probably one of the unsung great venues in the state of Idaho for basketball. They have brought in some juggernauts into this tournament this year, and I look at this. This is probably the best lineup they've ever had at the Avista tournament, and I'm excited to be able to go down there and do some games too. But it's going to be a great event. And you talk about Grangeville, Lewiston coming right out of the gate. I mean, it's off and running. I mean, we're going to be hoarse by the end of the weekend, but there's some great games that are going to be had in Lewiston. And you look at the lineups, you got a really good Clarkston team as well. There's, we know what the Bantams were able to kind of bring over, wink, wink, nudge, nudge from the Lapway side of things. But it's a who's who. I mean, Lapway, Lewiston, Clarkston, you got those teams that are known entities, but you bring in Rocky Mountain, they're going to be thrown in the mix. We saw them obviously beat Lake City earlier this year. So that's a murderer's row of a lineup.
Yeah, so I should mention Rocky Mountain, only the boys are coming out.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay.
No, you're good. You're good. So here's the girls bracket. Grangeville versus Lewiston, 9 a.m. Thursday. Then you've got Pendleton versus Moscow at noon. Pendleton, the Buckaroos from Oregon.
Buckaroos, yeah.
The game I'm most excited for, I think, is at 3 o'clock. Lapway is going to play Downey, California. Anytime you can play a Cali team, that's going to be something. And then the nightcap at 6 o'clock is Clarkston against Richland from the Tri-Cities. That's going to be tough.
The Bantams taking on the Bombers. That's going to be a nice little matchup there too. So that's cool. A good Richland program. And hats off to Shannon and the crew setting this event up. It's going to be a great tournament.
Yep, for sure. And we are going to try to broadcast some of those games from the Avista tournament on IdahoSports.com. That was going to be my question for Shannon. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that info on the site at IdahoSports.com. Okay, let's talk about boys hoops now, Scaggs. And again, we're going into really deep dives here with the basketball because we're going to take next week off for the holidays.
Yep.
There's not going to be any games to talk about. We're going to just kind of preview what's coming up in the next 2 weeks and do a big mega show for everybody. So.
And we didn't do a show last week. So,
right.
You guys did a show, but I didn't. Yeah.
So. For sure. So, okay, let's talk boys basketball. The big story from the holiday tournaments that wrapped up was Lapway going down to the Pro Image Sports Holiday Classic, hosted by Rocky Mountain, the small school edition. Lapway gets all the way to the championship, Scaggs, where an old familiar face awaits. The Baker Bulldogs from Baker City, Oregon. They met last year at the Treasure Valley Community College Classic, and Lapway famously, beat them on a last-second shot to win by 2. But Lapway goes down. They get to the championship against Baker. They fall by 5, 57-52. But what a tournament for the Wildcats. Along the way, they beat 2A Ambrose 71-58. They beat Royal. We talked about what a juggernaut they are from Washington. They blew them out 79-46. And then they fall to a very good Baker squad by 5 in the championship.
Yeah, and we talked about, if Lapway's got any, I don't want to say pitfalls. There's not really many with that program, but it's the bench. And if you play 3 games in 3 days, that's kind of state tournament-esque time. But early in the year. It's, if your legs can stay under you, and just really the shots didn't fall. They had their opportunities late in that game to come back and come away with a victory. But hats off, obviously, that Baker team's tough. That's a really, really tough, really good team. That beat the Wildcats down there. But you talk about, what Lapway is able to do. They're going to regroup and they're going to come back, guns blazing. I really see from the later part of this year, there's a lot to learn in a loss, and I don't really, now they got the monkey off the back as far as getting that loss. I don't think that there's the pressure necessarily on the team. It's kind of just go play free. Coach Eastman loves just letting his guys loose. He does a great job with that. You got Case Wynot, who's averaging a triple-double or a near triple-double a game. I mean, he's, flirting with quadruple doubles some nights. So, and then you got Year Out and the other guys in that, that lineup. That's a Lapway team that can make a whole lot of noise. And as they approach the Avista tournament too, like there's going to be some great games ahead of them. And, that's a team I'm not worried with Lapway at all. I think they're going to be right in the mix for a state championship again this year. Yeah,
they're going to be right in the mix. No doubt about it. The other team that came down to compete from Idaho at the Pro Image Sports Holiday Classic was Kamei. And Kamei went down and took their lumps a little bit. They fell to 2A Melba, 53-44. They fell to 2A West Side, 68-37. But then they rebounded and beat a 3A team, Homedale, in their final game, 39-28. They played really good competition. Coach Aaron Skinner's team is going to be better because of this.
Yeah, they played, they're obviously the North Idaho 9 we'll talk about in a minute, but that's a team I'm not worried about. Like you go play the who's who of 2A basketball in the state of Idaho. A couple teams that are going to be threatening for a state championship, at the next classification up. That Kamei team is going to be just fine. They've got dudes in the lineup. They're still kind of regrouping from football. It is what it is. It's holiday basketball right before Christmas break, but they're testing themselves and getting that winning. It's winning ugly in a game against Homedale. That's a big win for that program and what that, coach can do with that group. I still think they can make a whole lot of noise again and make another nice run.
Yeah. And otherwise their losses this year, they lost to 1 by Kendrick in the season opener, 50-49. We know how good Kendrick is. They lost to Logos last Tuesday. They played this game at ICCU Arena. On the campus of the University of Idaho. They lost by 5 to Logos, 50-45. That was a big result. So really, we like Lapway to move to state. Who's going to join them? It's going to come down to Logos and Kamei and Potlatch with Jackson Vowels is on an all-time heater right now. That cannot miss. And so Potlatch is 4-0 in the conference, 6-0 overall. This game coming up after the post-holiday break, Kamei hosting Potlatch on January 5th. I've got that circled on my calendar.
That's a must-see game. You don't want to talk about must-wins, but every win and loss, during the regular season, it leads towards that ever so coveted district seeding. That district tournament's an absolute meat grinder, and it's going to be no different this year. You look at the depth within the White Pine League this year. It's as deep as it's been in I think the last few years, or historically probably the last 10. But with Potlatch in the mix, Logos in the mix, Kamei in the mix, Lapway's there. You look at Prairie's, one of those teams that can sneak up on somebody. That conference is brutal. And so, whoever's going to come out of there is battle tested. They're going to be, bruised and battered, but, I think they're going to be no worse for the wear as far as getting to the state tournament. You never know, your first round game may be easier than your semifinal in your district tournament. So, yeah.
Yeah, look at this gauntlet coming up out of the holiday break for Kamei, and they don't have any more games. They need the time because they're going to play. They will play coming up here. They'll host Potlatch, and then they're at Lapway, and then they're at Troy, and then they're at Clearwater Valley in the annual rivalry game there, and then they host Logos. That is a gauntlet of a stretch to come out of the break with.
It's just they're going to trade blows with everybody else, and whoever's standing, it's like a standing 8 count at the end of the year. They're just going to be kind of wobbling, woozy, and that conference. But you talked about Jackson Vowels and Potlatch. You talk about heaters. That guy's drawing bullets right now, playing blackjack. He's just getting ace after ace, showing up on the table, and hopefully flipping the face card. That Potlatch team is deadly right now. And so, you walk in, is that a team that can surprise Lapway in the conference play? That's a team, athlete on athlete that can, I think, match up pretty well. We talked about last year with Lakeside and Lapway and how they matched up in their early season, affair. I look at Paul Latch and Lapway. That's going to be a game to circle. That's going to be a really, really, really good test for that Logger team.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun matchup when we get to it for sure. Okay, let's talk about the one holiday tournament that is currently happening, the Tarkanian Classic down in Las Vegas. Both the Coeur d'Alene and the Lake City boys are down there competing at this Scaggs. Let's start on the Coeur d'Alene side of things. They before they went down to the Tarkanian Classic, they hosted Bellarmine Prep, which is a really good team. They won that game 64-53 to kind of set the tone for this trip down to Vegas.
Yeah, no, Bellarmine Prep is a team that historically, everybody kind of knows the workings of how private schools can be in states, and you don't want to throw darts saying that teams recruit, but let's call it for what it is. That's a team that can recruit. And they get an 11-point win over historically a really good program out of Tacoma. Like that's a big win for that Viking team. And then I really look at that. It's kind of like one of those statement wins that can really set the course for the remainder of your year. That's a game that you like to have in a really tough team. Lake City, obviously, they played a tough North Central team and took a loss in that one. That's a team that's coached by, you may have heard this name before, Robert Sacre, the former Gonzaga Bulldog, is the coach of that North Central team, and they've got some dudes in their lineup. We saw them last year play at North Idaho College in a game before that really nice matchup between Lake City and Owyhee last year. But that's a team that, Lake City you look at. I'm not thinking the sky's falling yet because you're so young. But Coeur d'Alene's a team that, with the depth that they've got, Logan Orchard and the guys around him, Caden Simmons, and just there's great guard play. They're very unselfish. They distribute extremely well. That's a team that's going to be built for a really nice deep run.
Yeah, so both of these teams dropped their openers at the Tarkanian Classic. Coeur d'Alene fell to Riverside Poly from California, 58-50. Lake City fell in their Tarkanian opener against Layton Christian, which is a powerhouse from Utah, 72-43. And then both teams lost, Coeur d'Alene won yesterday over Sierra Vista, Nevada, 65-60. Lake City fell to San Gabriel Academy from California by only 3, 66-63. They're competing in separate brackets. So today now, Coeur d'Alene at 1-1 will take on St. Paul from California at 6:00 tonight. And then for Lake City, they're 0-2 in the tournament. They will play Prestonwood Christian from Texas at 1:30 this afternoon. So
I think both games as a program goes, you're playing unknowns. Really, it's like you don't get a scout. You don't get to really prep for these games. So it's like, all right, what's our offensive set do against whatever they show us on defense, and then adjust on the fly. And, really, I think a nice chance for these teams to just play free. What can we do with the ball in space and see how we can do, and, adjusting on the fly. And I look at Coeur d'Alene, obviously, with the upperclassmen leadership that they've got in that team. And that's an opportunity. If they can get a big win today, that'd be huge for that program moving forward. And, Lake City, coming off that run last year that they had and with a lot of unknown pieces, I think they've been pleasantly surprised early on. And, they beat a really good Bonners Ferry team. So that's, that Lake City team is moving forward. And I think they're going to make some strides as the year goes on too.
Definitely. And then, if the Tarkanian Classic wasn't rigorous enough, both Lake City and Coeur d'Alene have signed up for a holiday tournament post-Christmas as well, the Central Valley Holiday Tournament. They're going to go over to Spokane, and it's a little 4-team tournament with Coeur d'Alene, Lake City, Central Valley, and Meade. So Wednesday, the 27th, basically Coeur d'Alene's going to play Central Valley. Lake City's going to play Meade. Then they're going to swap partners on Thursday, the 28th. This should be good competition. Meade especially, I think, will be tough.
Yeah, you look at in 3A basketball over in Spokane, like that's, one of the programs that you kind of put on the top of the heap right now. We've seen Post Falls obviously beat Ridgeline already. So that tells you, it's going to show you what the IEL is made of as far as, you don't get to have a lot of talent depth inside of league. So when you get to step over with those GSL teams from Spokane, it certainly deepens the pool a little bit for competition. Regionally, you'll see these kids play each other all the time in AAU. So these kids are more than familiar with one another. It's just obviously you're separated by that state line that happens, like 9 miles away. But good test for both those teams.
Yep, for sure. So, and then, more post-holiday Christmas tournaments we'll get to here in just a moment, Scaggs. But first, we've got to unveil your North Idaho 9 for boys basketball. Again, these are the top 9 teams, regardless of classification. We'll have them scroll across the bottom line like the ESPN ticker. But for those that are listening audio only, kind of talk us through your selections here for the North Idaho 9 boys basketball selections.
Pre-Tarkanian, right? So number 1, Coeur d'Alene. That Vikings team's good. 2, Lakeside. They are who we thought they were. They're a legit team. I mean, as far as a group goes, that's a team affair. The Knights are good. Lapway at 3. We obviously talk about them. We'll know more about them obviously when we see them in person. We'll get eyeballs on them. But I know obviously you got Case. Why not? So what else do you need to really talk about? Kendrick. Coach Silflo's team, man. I'm telling you, these Tigers, they could repeat this year. There is a whole lot of talent in that program. They are good. They've got a couple of really good wins under their belt already, including that win over Kamei that we talked about. Post Falls at 5. I like the Trojans are a little sneaky team out there right now. And not a lot of people talk about them. We were high on them last year, like in losses. I look at them like, man, don't sleep on this team. They've got athletes aplenty. They play scrappy defense. They get good guard play from McCarthy. Like this team could be for real, and they're showing it this year. Like Asher Bowie and the cast of Shields and everybody else around them. That team they're good. Like they're going to be a nice, fun team to watch as the year goes on. Lake City at 6, Bonners Ferry at 7, which kind of seems like a weird place for a former state runner-up team to land, but that's just the landscape of North Idaho basketball right now. Potlatch landing at 8, and then Lakeland on the back end at number 9. But we've got, things can change quickly with teams like Kamei, Logos. There's other teams out there sneaking, kind of waiting to poach their spot in the power rankings.
Yep, that's a good North Idaho 9. Again, it's Lake City, or Coeur d'Alene 1. Almost misspoke there. Lakeside 2, Lapway 3, Kendrick 4, Post Falls 5, Lake City 6, Bonners Ferry 7, Potlatch 8, and Lakeland number 9. Let's start with Lakeside, Scaggs, because we talked about on the girls' side, they're going over to Welpinit for this Santa Slam holiday tournament. Same thing on the boys' side. They're going to play in Chilium.
Yes. There you go. Inchilium. You had it right the first time. Yeah.
Okay. They're going to play Inchilium today, Wednesday, the 20th at 4:30. Then they're going to play the hosts from Welpinit tomorrow on the 21st. What kind of competition is this going to be for a Lakeside team that, they're defending their title? They're 4-0, man.
Honestly, like these could be 2 blowouts. I just look at Lakeside and what they're able to do. That lineup, Syjon and everybody else, and that's Hendricks. You start throwing around what they're able to do. I don't know if you've seen some of the highlights that have shown up in the news with these guys, and it's just a fun team to watch. They're dunking, they're playing loose and free, but they play very, very stingy defense as well. I really like this Lakeside team. Again, we talked about Vander Brown. We knew how good he was last year when, was the kind of straw that stirred the drink necessarily with that group, to win a state championship. This is a more complete team this year. And in my mind, they've added some good pieces. Spotted Horse coming in has been a great contributor in this lineup as well. Charlie that's in there as well. This group is good. They got better. And that's, Coach Two Teeth has done such a great job with this program that I look at them and that's, they could repeat. And that's, saying a lot when you got Lapway lurking right there too. It wouldn't surprise me to see a rematch of Lapway Lakeside in a state championship.
Yeah, that would be really exciting and really fun for Lakeside. We'll see how they do over here at the Santa Slam in Welpinit. Now let's move just kind of by classification. Sandpoint, I feel like always schedules a good trip and a good, interesting non-conference tournament. Last year they went to Hawaii. Remember they played on a tournament out of Hawaii.
Cabo this year or what? Like,
oh no, they're staying stateside this year.
Okay.
The competition will be significantly difficult, though. They're going to go to Vancouver, Washington to compete in the Fort Vancouver Holiday Invitational. They will start with Juanita High from Washington, and from there, it just depends on whether they win or lose.
Yeah, Juanita, playing a team from I think Pierce County, if I'm not mistaken, their Tacoma school. That's a test. I mean, for Sandpoint to step in against some of Western Washington's best, that's a good job by coach to get some good competition. But man, I hope they come out of it healthy, and there could be an opportunity to get a couple good games there. But you're stepping toe to toe with some pretty good teams over there once you go into the Vancouver area.
Yeah, Sandpoint's 3-4 on the season. They've played a rigorous schedule, but really this conference, I mean, I have no idea. You
Nope.
Look at the other two teams, Lakeland and Moscow. They just played last Friday to double overtime, and Lakeland won 85-82. This to me is a wide open affair between all three teams.
Yeah, no, it's a pick 'em. I think right now Lakeland's got a little bit of the upper hand in conference, but Moscow's certainly one of those teams. It wouldn't surprise me to see them all split on the regular season schedule. They're all just 1-1 against each other. Like you go into district tournament and you're just kind of like shrugging, like you end up with who you end up with. But yeah, no, I look at the 4A IEL it is an absolute crapshoot. I don't think that there is any other better way to describe it than you have no idea. Like it's like wait and see. You'll know when you know. And
yes.
But I think Lakeland right now kind of holds the upper hand a little bit, obviously, with the win over Moscow. But just, you look at the roster, I think that there's some good pieces there within that lineup as well that can make some competitive wins for Lakeland. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things shake up. I know I keep repeating myself, but, yeah.
Yep. Okay, the 3A teams from the north, Bonners Ferry and Timberlake, like the girls, are going to compete in the Eagle Holiday Classic hosted by West Valley High School in Spokane. Timberlake, let's start with them. Timberlake's 3-6. They're trying to find their footing a little bit. They've taken it on the chin against Sandpoint, Lake City. They already lost to West Valley, the host school of this event, 89-31. They play Genesis Prep on Thursday, the 21st, and then they get ready for this Eagle Holiday Classic. They're going to play Rogers on Wednesday, the 27th, and then they're going to play Pullman on Friday, the 29th. Pullman's going to be tough. Rogers is going
to be tough, too.
Yeah. Not a good draw for Timberlake.
Not a good draw for the Tigers. Pullman, they won on a buzzer beater over Lewiston, which I don't know if we didn't talk about that 2 weeks ago. That was a crazy back and forth game between the Bengals and the Greyhounds. But this is an Idaho Prepcast. But Pullman, that's not a good matchup. They got a guy by the name of Champ Pewaukee on that team that is an absolute dude for the Greyhounds, and that's going to be an absolute matchup nightmare for Timberlake in that game. And Rogers has great athletes as well. I mean, they just had one of their players sign for football with the University of Idaho. So yeah, that's a team you're going to walk into kind of a hornet's nest with those two games for Timberlake.
Now, Bonners Ferry also gets Pullman on Thursday, the 28th, and they will play the hosts from West Valley on the 27th. I'm really intrigued to see how Bonners Ferry does. There are only 2 losses this year. The Badgers, last year's 3A runner-up, is 6-2. They have lost to Coeur d'Alene in their season opener by 12, and then they lost to Lake City, another 5A school, by 4, 74-70.
That Pullman game could be interesting. That's going to be an interesting game. I think complete team Pullman, I think in my mind, has a little bit more of the athletic edge. But I mean, Coach Brantner, I know really well. That's still the coach there. That's a good program. Historically, they've been really good. That's a strong team. That conference is tough. The GSL 2A in basketball, and Coach, if Shannon Wilson's still in here, obviously the athletic director at Clarkson, he will attest to how tough that league is. That's a really tough matchup for Bonners Ferry in the first round. Then you get West Valley. That's another tough game. So that's a tough draw. We'll know what the Badgers are made of coming out of those 2 games. I think that's a really, really good lesson. If you're going to look for some really good similar size competition for Bonners Ferry, those are 2 really good games to have on your schedule as you approach, the latter part of this year, because you're not going to really get it with only a 2-game league schedule. So you're going to be playing a lot of mix of the 4A and the 2As that are left. So, it's kind of a test before, to say, hey, if we make it to state, this is where we know we're at. These are 2 games that you'd kind of see state level competition with.
And then it builds to the first game coming out of the break on January 6th at Lakeside.
Yep.
How about that matchup?
That's going to be fun. That will be a fun. I mean, it's a classification, you're skipping obviously the 2A game, but Kudos to both those teams for making this game happen. That is a fun matchup that I think give the fans what they want there. That's going to be a fun one.
I love it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's go 2A now. We talked about Freeman is hosting a little tournament, boys and girls, in Rockford, the Freeman Holiday Tournament. Kellogg and Logos are both going over to compete from Idaho. On the first day, Wednesday, the 27th, Kellogg is going to play Shadle Park from Spokane. And then Logos in their opener is going to play the host from Freeman. What do you think about these matchups? Just the day one matchups here. Let's start with Shadle Park for Kellogg.
Shadle Park, I mean, that's going to be a tough matchup. That's another GSL 2A school. That's going to be a really tough one for the Wildcats. And those Spokane teams have been on the upswing. And we talked about North Central kind of being the doormat a little bit years past. Now they're good. That conference, there's no nights off there, night in, night out. Shannon Wilson, correct me if I'm wrong if you're still hanging out. But I think that's a tough matchup for Kellogg. The Highlanders are a good program. And then you look at the Logos drawing the Scotties. Like, that's another 1A team that, historically Freeman's got good athletes in their programs and they've been able to be competitive. So if we're going to know what Logos is made of, they're going to have a nice little test there playing the Freeman Scotties. And that's a, 1A school in Washington, but a school with over 450 kids. So, I mean, that's like the equivalent of playing a 3A Idaho school. So that's a good test there for Logos and that group of guys and the Fighting Garrison Hardys. And so, well, I like the Knights. So I really think, we've been seeing them obviously in football stepping up this year, but that's a scrappy group of kids that just play hard. And I think a nice little schedule bump for the Knights. Yeah.
And then looking at the second matchup on Thursday, the 28th, after they each have their opener, Kellogg and Logos are going to play each other, Scaggs. I'm really intrigued by that.
Yeah, I think that you had to go to Washington to play two Idaho teams. It's like playing in Nevada to get two Idaho teams. But yeah, we could have made that happen probably by making a phone call and saving a trip and a bus trip. But yeah, I think that's a good matchup. That really is. I look at that and that's like, that matchup makes sense. I think that you're going to get a competitive game there. I wouldn't be surprised to see Logos win that game, to be honest with you. The athletes that they've got there and being able to post up and get good guard play, that's going to be a good little matchup for Logos against Kellogg in that second game.
Definitely. And then 1A D1 and 1A D2, Deary and Genesee both going over to Colton for the Colton Christmas tournament. On Wednesday, the 27th, Deary will play Colton, the hosts, while Genesee will play Garpal, and then they'll swap partners and play the other side. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how Deary competes here against Garpal and Colton.
Yeah, I think that you're going to learn more about Deary than you would Genesee in my mind out of those two games. But just getting any game on the schedule around Christmas break, I think is difficult enough to try to make those matchups happen. So good job getting games on the schedule. But yeah, and then obviously we've talked about the Avista tournament too. But there's a whole lot of good scheduling going on in North Idaho, District 1 and 2.
Yeah, Genesee is 0-7 currently, including 2 losses to Deary. So that's kind of why I'm focused more on Deary coming into this Colton Christmas tournament. And then, yes, you mentioned it, Scaggs, the Avista Holiday Tournament. Again, Shannon, long ago, posted this in the chat. Avista, team from Downey, California, Rocky Mountain coming up from the Boise Meridian area. Oregon, the Buckaroos from Pendleton, Richland, and then Clarkston, Lewiston, Moscow, Lapway, the 4 local teams there. Let's take a look at this boys bracket and break it down, because right away out of the gates, first game, 10:30 a.m., Lewiston versus Kendrick. How about it?
Yes. I love it. Absolutely. Coach Silflo's got to be sitting here like chuckling at Christmas came early that he gets his boys a 5A, those 5A, 1A, D2 matchups. You don't get any bigger spread than that. But I look at this Tigers, these guys are going to be jacked for this game. And I know that I'm excited talking about it, but You talk about a great little matchup to see, like, what's Kendrick made of? How could they go toe to toe with the who's who, or the bigger schools in the state? You get the little pesky neighbor, tucked 18 miles up the road from Lewiston, up through Gibbs Eddy and up the river that way, and yeah, that's going to be a fun matchup, like 10:30 game. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yep. Kendrick and Lewiston. That is followed by Moscow against Pendleton. Same matchup as on the girls' side. And then again, game I'm really interested in, 4:30. Lapway is going to play Downey, California. That'll be interesting. And then the nightcap is Clarkston versus Rocky Mountain. Rocky Mountain is coached by former Lapway standout Ivory Williams. That's the connection there. But yeah, this Lapway Downey matchup is going to be interesting too.
Yeah, a team we obviously know nothing about other than like they bring in quality athletes, and that's going to be a good matchup for Lapway. And Coach Eastman's I know playing in the P1FCU activity center there at LCSC, like that, he's going to just kind of like take the chain off the dogs and let them go. Don't be surprised if you see Case throwing up 45 plus in a game in this tournament. I think that you got to have a little loose basketball, and you're kind of playing games that I don't want to say don't mean anything. It's games that you just want to say like, hey, just be athletes and go play and have fun with your teammates. And it's a great little showcase. Absolutely. And then that Rocky Clarkson game, I know that we're not talking about Southern, the SIC stuff, but that's going to be a nice little matchup too. Clarkson's got some good ball players on their team, and they're a very well-coached team as well.
Yeah, that's
if you look at if Lapway gets a win and Clarkson gets a win, that's an intriguing matchup there that you can get if the Bantams are going to be taking on the Wildcats. That's a fun game.
Yeah, I think selfishly, I would love to see Lapway play. Obviously, they're going to play Downey right away.
Rocky would be cool.
Rocky would be great for the storyline, right? 5A versus 1A, and then also former player now coaching the opposition. I'd be okay with them playing Clarkston also. I think that would be a great matchup. And then, I kind of want to see Kendrick and Lapway meet up at some point, whether that's on the backside of the bracket in the championship or Lewiston, another 5A would be cool also. But either way, for Lapway, this is kind of their last chance to get, because if we're being honest, they're going to get into White Pine play and kind of have their run of the joint. So this should be kind of the last chance for them to really prove their mettle. Absolutely.
And you look at this Kendrick team, I mean, you could see a Cinderella run, like realistically out of that Tigers group. There is some talent there. You got, Nathan Twite can play with anybody. I mean, he's got a big frame on him. He's going to be a kid that, he can stretch the floor as a wing guy, but he can shoot too. But I don't know if you saw, there was a big clip of him on Twitter with him throwing down a monster dunk in one of the games too. So yeah, that Kendrick team could be pesky. They can make things interesting. If they could shock the Bengals in game one, they got a realistic shot at getting a win in game two too. I mean, that's a team I think that they could give Moscow absolute fits or whoever they end up playing. But yeah, that's a team. Keep an eye on. Dark horse in that tournament's Kendrick. Yeah. Absolutely.
A lot of good holiday hoops on the table, both girls and boys. And of course, you can stay tuned to IdahoSports.com for all the latest updates on scores and schedules. All right. We went super long today, Scaggs, but it's all right because we're taking next week off.
That's right.
And we'll be back to start the new year, 2024. So big thanks to everybody who tuned in live today on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account. If you can hit that like button and share it one more time before you dip out, that'll help everybody else find it a little easier as they try to watch the replay. But for Cousin Eddie, Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. We'll see you in 2024 for the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.